You see that banana sitting on your kitchen counter? Yeah, it looks pretty harmless, right? Well, if you peel back the skin, you'll find one of the most incredible and honestly one of the most brutal stories in the history of food. This is not just about a fruit. It's about a corporation that got so powerful it pretty much became its own empire, complete with its own army and its own wars.
So how in the world did this happen? How did this humble yellow fruit get used to build a massive corporate empire, topple presidents, and even create its own private navy? Yeah, you heard that right. It's a wild ride, so let's get into it.
You've probably heard the term banana republic. Maybe you've even shopped at the clothing store. But that phrase wasn't just some clever marketing gimmick. It was originally a very literal description for countries whose governments were, for all intents and purposes, owned and operated by the American banana companies we're about to explore.
Okay, so here's our roadmap. We're gonna start with a couple of ambitious entrepreneurs who saw gold in this yellow fruit. We'll track their rise as they build an empire that got nicknamed the Octopus, uncover the straight-up violence they used to protect it, and then finally we'll look at the bruised legacy that is still with us today. You know, every empire has an origin story. And this one? It doesn't start in some fancy boardroom. It starts on the sweltering, sticky docks of Mobile, Alabama, with a broke immigrant named Sam Zimmeray, and a really, really audacious idea.
See, back then, the big importers only wanted perfectly green, hard bananas that could survive these long train journeys across the country. But the ripe ones, the ones with a few brown spots, they were considered garbage, literally thrown out. So Sam, he takes his entire life savings, just $150, and buys a shipment of this worthless fruit. Then he basically lived on a train, racing against the clock and telegraphing ahead to towns along the route to sell the bananas before they went bad. He figured out how to make a profit where everyone else just saw trash. Now, while Sam was hustling and building his small business, the real titans of the industry were making some big moves. In 1899, a railroad tycoon named Minor C. Keith merged his operations with a massive Boston-based importer, and together they created one single colossal entity, the United Fruit Company. The giant was born. United Fruit's business strategy was simple, and it was absolutely ruthless. Control everything. I mean, think about it. To make a fragile fruit that spoils super fast profitable, they realized they had to own the entire supply chain, from the dirt in Central America all the way to the fruit bowl in your grandma's kitchen. And this is how they became more than just a company. They basically became a state within a state. People in Central America gave them a nickname, El Pulpo, the octopus, because their tentacles reached into every single corner of life. I mean, look at this list. They owned the land, all the railroads, the radio stations, the mail service. They even paid their workers in vouchers that could only be spent at company-owned stores. In every way that mattered, they were the government.
But, when controlling all the infrastructure wasn't quite enough, the company shifted its strategy to just wielding raw, naked power. It went from being a business to a political force, one that would literally create and destroy entire nations just to protect its bottom line.
Let's go back to Sam Zimmeray for a second. By 1910, his own company was huge. But then a New Deal in Honduras threatened his sweet tax-free status. So what did he do? He didn't just lobby or write letters. No. He hired a private mercenary army, sailed to Honduras, overthrew the government, and installed a brand new president who gave him everything he wanted. A single businessman literally picked the leader of a sovereign nation. Just insane.
This is one of the darkest moments in the company's history. In 1928, thousands of United Fruit workers in Colombia went on strike. They were asking for the most basic rights, a 6-day work week, to be paid in actual money instead of those company vouchers. And the company's response? It told the US government that communists were taking over. So, under pressure from the US, the Colombian military opened fire on the striking workers and their families. They killed hundreds, maybe even more than 1,000 people.
And just like that, the company had found its magic word. All through the Cold War, any government, any union, any movement that challenged United Fruit's profits wasn't just a business problem anymore. Nope, it was branded a communist threat. And this was the perfect tool to get the US government and the CIA to do their dirty work for them. This whole tactic really reached its peak in 1954 in Guatemala. The country's democratically elected president, Jacobo Arbenz, started a land reform program. The problem for United Fruit Well, the program targeted huge areas of land that the company owned but wasn't even using. So the company launched this massive PR campaign back in the US, painting Arbenz as a Soviet puppet. The result, a CIA-backed coup that overthrew a democracy and plunged Guatemala into decades of civil war.
And here's the crazy part. While all of this violence and political meddling was going on down in Central America, the company was building this incredibly wholesome, friendly image back home. They paid doctors to write articles about how healthy bananas were. They made recipe books for housewives. They famously convinced an entire generation of kids to put sliced bananas on their breakfast cereal. And to top it all off, they created the iconic Miss Chiquita, the absolute perfect friendly face for a completely ruthless operation.
But there was one enemy that military coups and slick ad campaigns just couldn't defeat: nature. See, the company's entire business model, growing just a single type of banana over and over, was creating the perfect storm for a biological catastrophe. So, the original banana that Americans fell in love with was called the Gros Michel, or Big Mike. And people who tasted it said it was way better, sweeter, creamier. In fact, that artificial banana flavor in candy, that's based on the Big Mike. But United Fruit had a fatal flaw in its business model. They only grew this one single variety. It's a practice called monoculture, and it meant their entire crop was genetically identical. So when a fungus called Panama disease showed up, it spread like wildfire and just completely wiped out the Big Mike. The company had no choice but to quietly switch to a less tasty but resistant alternative, the Cavendish. And that is the banana that's sitting in your kitchen right now.
So where did all this leave the Octopus? Well, the company eventually realized its name was, let's just say, toxic. It tried to rebrand, but its past and its way of doing business were pretty hard to escape.
So in the 1970s, the United Fruit Company officially became Chiquita Brands International, taking the name of its happy, friendly mascot. But, well, changing the name didn't really change the company's DNA, and the scandals were far, far from over.
I mean, get this. As recently as 2007, the company, now Chiquita, pleaded guilty and paid a $25 million fine to the U.S. Department of Justice. And the charge? Making illegal payments to a violent Colombian paramilitary group, a group the U.S. government had officially designated as a terrorist organization. And here is the ultimate, unbelievable irony. The exact same business practice, that monoculture that killed the first banana, is now threatening its replacement. A new, more aggressive strain of Panama disease has shown up, and our defenses aren't working against it. It's coming for the Cavendish. The entire $25 billion global banana industry is facing the exact same existential threat all over again.
It really leaves us with a pretty heavy question, doesn't it? The story of the banana shows us that behind a simple, cheap, everyday product can lie a century of exploitation, violence, and huge ecological gambles. It kind of makes you wonder, right? What other hidden histories are sitting there in your grocery cart?